Welcome back to CFO Weekly, where we're talking with financial leaders about how to build efficiency in their teams, create time for strategy, and ultimately get results. With your host, Megan Weiss. Let's jump right in.
Today, my guest is Ben Taylor. Ben is the CEO and co-founder of SoftLedger, a cloud accounting software provider that empowers growing companies to operate more efficiently and make smarter decisions. A CPA with more than 10 years of varied public and private accounting experience, Ben has led many complex financial projects to successful outcomes. Ben began his career at Ernst & Young, followed by in-house management roles at Fannie Mae and other public companies, and holds a BS in accounting from the University of Maryland. Ben, thank you very much for joining me on today's episode of CFO Weekly.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, today we're going to be discussing a product you co-founded, SoftLedger, why you created it, what is it used for, and what differentiates it in the marketplace. I'm looking forward to learning more about both you and SoftLedger. So let's get started.
Sounds good.
First, let's start with you. Tell me about your career progression and how it is that you got to where you are today.
Sure. I started my career in public accounting at Ernst & Young in the Washington, D.C. area. Then I worked in financial reporting for Fannie Mae for a few years. Then when I started SoftLedger, I was managing at the time a few different areas in the accounting department for a public company. And it took too long to close the books every month, which is what led me to start in SoftLedger.
Yeah. Wow. Did you have any kind of background in writing software?
No, I did not. So I pretty much we were using an old mid-market accounting system at the time, Microsoft Dynamics GP, which was one of the first general purpose accounting systems. And it took too long to get financial data from operations into the hands of management. That's kind of what I realized. And so I knew that part, but I didn't know how to actually build software. And so I called up my longtime friend, Jeff Ostrega, who we've known each other since freshman year of college. And I talked to him about building a general ledger and ultimately convinced him to take a crack at it. And so, yeah, that's how we got started.
Wow, that's a great story. So as you look back throughout your career, are there any career moves or stories that stand out in your mind as being turning points?
Absolutely. One that comes to mind is the move to a senior accountant role at a small public company. That it was actually the company I just referenced that I was working at when I started SoftLedger. Prior to that, I had worked at very large companies where I felt a bit siloed to my particular area. And then when I made the move to that company, the smaller company, it's called Mattersight, I had to take a significant pay cut, and the advancement opportunities were a lot less clear. But ultimately, it ended up being a pretty pivotal point in my career. I got the opportunity to take on some responsibilities that I was never exposed to before, and even weigh in on things like customer contract negotiations. It really felt like I was providing more strategic advice to management than I was before.
Yeah, as someone who's worked for both small and large companies, I prefer small companies as well. I mean, there's some people out there that like being specialists, but I like wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah, I agree. And then I guess I ended up going to the very smallest company by starting my own. That's many hats with this one.
Yeah, I bet. So in your view, how has the role of the CFO evolved over the last decade, and where is it heading?
So I guess that the answer to the last question kind of parlays into this. It continues to move toward serving as a strategic advisor. I think organizations are generally more attuned to getting to the importance of sound financial advice. And this is because companies with strong financial leadership, they do better. They outperform their competitors. And I think that having a strong finance and accounting function is really a competitive advantage, and mature companies are realizing that.
Yeah, I guess that hasn't always been the case. I guess accounting used to be more backwards looking, but more than ever, it's definitely forward looking role.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think connecting, obviously we see this from a technology perspective a lot, but connecting the backward looking and the forward looking is really the holy grail. And it's tricky to set that up right, but I think organizations understand the importance of that enough that they invest in it.
So as the co-founder of SoftLedger, tell me about this product.
Sure. So at Mattersight, the company I was working at when I started SoftLedger, it took too long to get financial data. And so that's what this really comes down to, is getting that process to be as quick as possible. So, at the time we had spent so much time manually configuring spreadsheets to get into our old general ledger, just so that we could then export the journal entries on the reporting side and update a spreadsheet, and that's what drove the reports. And so we thought, how quick could this process be with all the advancements in cloud technology over the last or software technology generally over the past couple of decades? There must be a way to speed this up. So how quick could it be? Maybe a lot of this could be available in real time. And that's what really led us down this road of developing a mid-market accounting solution and starting to try to automate every component of the process of getting from operations to the financial data that management needs to run the business.
So you mentioned it being for mid-market. What is the ideal customer for this product?
So there are a few different ones, but probably the single biggest ideal customer is a customer that has, or any organization that has multiple entities and needs to consolidate them easily in a single system. And that could be a company that's using multiple QuickBooks or Xero instances. They have 20 or 30 different entities or 80 different entities even. And maybe a lot of these are not overly complicated. There are a few operating entities that are more complicated, but there's a lot that are not. And they don't have a huge accounting department, and they just want the complexity is really consolidating everything easily. And right now they're exporting all of that into Excel and updating a spreadsheet. And if something changes one of the entities, then they got to go back, update the spreadsheet again, and do the whole process. If that's the pain, then that's a really good one for us. Is a CFO or controller at a company that has multiple entities and has a process like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as I look at all the technology available, I'm surprised by how many companies still have quite a few manual processes within their finance and accounting function.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of it's tough to get it in with the constant close process and everything else. So yeah, it's taken some time still, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement for many organizations in that area.
Yeah. So how is it possible for SoftLedger to stay agnostic to various regulatory environments? And why is that important in a product?
That's a great point. It's kind of critical to how we've built it. Is you might have heard that math is the same everywhere. The core principles of accounting are the same everywhere as well, and similarly, the core required functionality in a general purpose accounting platform. That's what we're describing here. That's what we are. That's what NetSuite is, Intact, Microsoft Dynamics. They're all general purpose accounting platforms. That core functionality is the same everywhere as well. It has to be. And so we did the same thing and deliberately built our platform to be general purpose, carefully assessing every new product feature and change to ensure that it's built to handle uncertainty. And that's how we can remain agnostic, is by configuring the chart of accounts, configuring other dimensions like cost centers, and your mappings to various reports, you can report in GAAP, US GAAP, local GAAP versions, IFRS, whatever you need.
And let's talk a little bit about the setup of this product. How out of the box is it, and how easy is it to get started?
Sure, it's really easy to get started. That is something that we strive to do from day one. Is really build a product focused application where everything is made to be easy to learn, quick to get up and running, self configurable, and so we've often found that our customers can get up and running in weeks instead of months. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into actually getting your data in the right format and getting it all set up to be important to the system. But once that's done, the process of actually getting your team up and running and getting them to learn it and getting to be using us and fully transition, it can be often really quick.
Wow. Let's talk for a minute about API-driven accounting. First of all, I've never really heard the term, but what is API?
Sure. So it stands for Application Programming Interface. That's what API is. And essentially what that means is it's a mechanism for using an application without the user interface. Integrations between cloud applications generally use an API. And if you built a cloud application 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, you probably built the application first, and then you built the API. So the API was more of an add-on thing than it was something that was contemplated from the onset. Whereas today, if you build a cloud-based application, APIs are likely on your mind as you're developing the system architecture. This results in an application that's fundamentally easier to integrate with other cloud applications because you're using the UI the user interface to program the API, and then when another application needs to do that, they're kind of doing the same thing. So I don't know if that. No, it's kind of tough to figure out how that fits in. I know it's thrown around. It's a little bit of a buzzword sometimes.
So does that basically mean that it's easier to kind of plug things into a system?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And if you have engineers working for your company involved in that, developing your tech stack, this is, we've built it in the way that it's like a more of a standard way of integrating. So it's easier for them to use as well.
And so as we look into the future, cryptocurrency obviously becoming very big these days. How do you think that is going to impact accounting?
Yeah. Great question. We're really excited about blockchains and blockchain-based assets like cryptocurrencies, other related technologies that have come up as part of this as well. And we think once they're used widely, they'll help to automate certain aspects of accounting. That said, you'll always need a general ledger to bring everything together. And so I don't think that there's a lot of excitement around maybe automating the whole stack, and I don't think it's going to quite be that. So the general ledger doesn't make sense to live on a blockchain is how we view it. Yeah. But there's a lot of exciting things that individual processes, certain industries that could really leverage blockchain based ledgers to help out a lot. And so I think the second part of that was what mainstream adoption looks like and when it happens is still tough to say. I think more regulatory clarity will certainly help, particularly around stable coins. These are like representations of US dollars or euros that are out there and are getting a little bit more attention right now. And it's a bit of a chicken and the egg problem. So they're used a little bit more, then regulators come in and put some regulation around them. And then maybe that there's a little bit of a pullback, and then maybe it's a few years and they're used a little bit more, and then there's more regulatory attention. So it'll take a while before they're really widely used, but I think once it's clear how these assets are being used, when there's a lot of business being a lot of economic activity being based on them, then kind of that comes together a little bit clearer to see, okay, this is what the future state of them looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting concept. And I was driving through a very small country town not too long ago, and I passed by an auto mechanic who was advertising that they were accepting Bitcoin for payments.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so maybe it's not as far away as we think it might be.
Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, a few years ago, I think a lot of people learned about it, and then it kind of, there was a little bit of a lull and for mainstream kind of it being out there, and I think recently it's upticked again, and there's a lot of tools like that make it sure there's the easy for any business to accept it, and so we're excited to be serving companies in that area and being kind of at the forefront of this new trend.
How are you changing the product to incorporate cryptocurrency?
We built out specific functionality for cryptocurrencies. It's a little over 3 years ago that we released that. And in 2017, late 2017, we were receiving some inbound interest from companies about our functionality around crypto, and it was something that Jeff and I were interested in separately. And as we went further into it, we realized it's kind of like a lot of these companies are doing mini IPOs, at least from a regulatory compliance perspective. That's we thought, okay, that's probably what it looks like to the SEC and other regulatory bodies. And so we thought this is going to be something that there really need to be tools for these companies to track these really complicated assets and complicated transactions that they're doing with a very small team. Maybe not even any full-time accountants on the team. And so that's what that's when we decided to build out all this functionality for these assets. We've just been developing that ever since. And as you're using them more, as part of your business, you're paying vendors with them, you're accepting them as payment, holding them on behalf of others. It just gets really complicated. And so we've just kind of prioritized what we think are the right features to still stay general purpose and still stay as our mission of getting all the companies, all of your financial data quickly into the hands of management, but being able to serve these complex crypto asset use cases.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are definitely ahead of the curve there. So real-time financials might seem like a pipe dream to many companies who, like as we discussed, still struggle with month-end close. So what is your advice for companies on getting to a point where real-time financials are a reality?
For sure. It's a big goal to set. It will definitely take some time to get there. And maybe it's not practical that 100% of your financials will ever be real time. It just depends. Every business is unique. There's always some edge cases. Sometimes the reality is, there are certain things that just won't be real time. But it's all about running down a list of all the processes that create financial data and removing friction where you can. Maybe only a few things can be real time for now, and some things need to be batched, but you can start working on those. It doesn't need to all happen at once. But the important part is having that idea of, okay, let's get everything as fast as possible and let's just go down the list and see what we can do. Because I think through that, there are some things that could be a lot quicker. And some of them could be available in real time, but just cutting out the friction, directly connecting things when possible.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at finance and accounting as a profession, and the term I've heard for the last few years is perpetual close, as opposed to month-end close. So do you think it's feasible that most companies, or even many companies, can get to a point where month-end close is no longer a thing and they're closing basically on a daily basis?
I think there will always be some monthly close because there are going to be monthly financial reporting requirements and other just certain financial reports that need to be locked down and say, this is the state of them at this time. Here's all the support. Here's how the system existed at that point in time. So I think there's always going to be something like that, but that doesn't mean that during the month you can't start to get things a lot quicker. And so maybe those real time, the data that's able to be available in real time. Maybe this is your customer facing invoicing and revenue for revenue that there's no timing difference for, and you can just book it with a transaction. Maybe you could see that right away, and maybe there's expenses that could appear right away, and you can get a little cut at what your margins are earlier in the month. But then there's some things like accruals and estimates that aren't going to be available mid-month. I think that's some hybrid of that is probably where this is headed.
Yeah, I guess using technology to maybe get to a point where the month end isn't quite the fire drill it is for many companies these days.
Yeah, that would be great. There's enough room for improvement that even just a faster process that's not necessarily even mostly perpetual would be in many cases a welcome change, I would think.
And lastly, as a business leader, what is keeping you up at night right now?
We raised some money earlier this year to expand our team, and we've been doing that over the past several months, and grow quicker, and all the things that we hadn't been able to do prior to raising that capital. And so, I guess just aligning everything together. The big thing is developing a predictable and scalable process for generating revenue, and doing that quicker. And that's always tricky. So that's probably the biggest thing. But there's always a lot of little things. But things. Yeah. Crazy
times we live in for sure these days.
Yep.
Ben, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed speaking with you and learning about SoftLedger. It sounds like you're both doing great things, and I wish you continued success in the future.
Thanks. Yep, same.
To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and please tune in next week. And until then, take care.
If you're ready to boost efficiency and streamline your accounting processes at significant cost savings, it's time to talk with Personiv. Their people-powered solutions have transformed the delivery of back-office tasks and general accounting functions for decades, partnering with clients to provide everything from accounts payable to payroll services. See what Personiv can do for you by visiting personiv.com.
You've been listening to CFO Weekly, presented by Personiv. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to hear all of our episodes. Want to learn more? Check out personiv.com. Thanks for listening.